Today on PedalBox, we're retreating to the garage where hopefully we'll find something to do, because right now, despite being in the afternoon, it is still several degrees below zero.
Right, that is quite enough of the outside world for the time being, because while it's only about 5 degrees in here, it's 5 more than it is outside, and this little heater is doing sterling work trying to keep my toes from freezing into my shoes. So with that, and the preservation of ourselves to do a bit more work when it warms up later, and indeed tomorrow, we're going to go through some of the most commonly asked questions we get when we take the cars to shows, talk about it online, and some of the ones from YouTube comments as well.
Yeah, so number one question, often at shows, is what's the end goal for this thing? Where are we going to take it? What's it going to do?
Why are you doing this? This seems mad. And you're right, it is usually a bit mad. And ultimately, the plan is to have it as a drivable car on the road as well as track.
Yeah, obviously any of you guys watching the show, you'll know that we're currently going to try and get it IVA'd. But the thing that most people at the shows are wondering is it going to race?
Yeah.
And the honest answer is no.
No.
But even if it was to try, it would lose hilariously.
Yeah, it would be so uncompetitive in one of the only competitions I think with charitable interpretation of the rules, think it might be eligible for. It would get absolutely crushed. So we're not even going to try. Yeah. It's for the track in as much that we'll take it to track days, but it is definitely not a competitive thing. And people go, oh, okay, that's surprising. I don't know why, because it's not surprising at all that a home-built car is not going to compete in many things.
I mean, there's another part to it as well, right? We're not building it with any rule set in mind, so it doesn't fit anything. So the only things it could plausibly race in are open, basically unrestricted classes, which is where the lack of competitiveness would come from.
Because you can put so much silliness into a vehicle in an unrestricted category that it would just be absolutely decimated. I mean, we have no idea what it's going to handle like still, so there's so many open-ended things. It's a non-starter, basically. Yeah,
so the gist is road and track, but the track would be like on a for fun basis, open pit lane track day kind of stuff.
So the other question, because when we take this to shows, it's normally among various other cars in the fleet that clearly are not finished, is why are you working on this when you have so many other cars, and why are we working on the other cars when this is the kit car is clearly not finished? And that's pretty valid. And the original point of the channel was actually not to build this project at all.
Yeah, the channel was supposed to commit us to working on our other projects. I didn't have the SG1 at the time, but I did have a Mark 1 Golf that, which I still have. But I was going to do an engine swap in that I haven't done. You had the VR6
I had the VR6 Mark II, which the engine is still sat behind me awaiting rebuild. Now I do have all the parts for it. I've been saying that for about 12 months as well. And we also had an A3, which was my other half's learner car at the time. And once she passed her test, she could no longer afford to insure it, because who'd have thought 180 brake turbo 4-wheel drive hot hatch is not a great car for a learner to insure for their first time. It was about $4,000 a year. And we actually started with that car as an idea, and we filmed a bunch of stuff. That episode has never even been edited, but we were going to take it to, I think, the Nürburgring.
Among other places.
As well as Llandau in Wales, which we did take it to. We did all of that video. Doing the brakes, doing the service, kind of all of the basic stuff you need to do to a car to build up something that is comfortable as a daily, but is also a fun track car. And then I found this chassis on eBay and said, hey Chris, this would be way funnier. Surely this will get way more views. It'll be way more interesting. And then it kind of escalated. And now we're here 8 years later.
I think the real core of it is we got sniped by a kind of wouldn't it be wacky. I think that's really what it comes down to, is we saw this thing, we thought it'd be great fun to build, we thought it'd be really interesting for the viewers, and we just let ourselves get distracted with it. Yeah. I don't regret it by any means, but I do think that's what happened.
I have some regrets, which we'll come on to, but I don't regret building this as it stands. I think it is much more interesting than just building another car for the track, even the Mark II, the Mark I, anything like that. It is definitely a much more interesting project. However, it has a lot of problems as a result. Not just in terms of what we need to know in the building of it, but also in terms of actually growing the channel.
So there's two other questions we get asked that are kind of the same question. Is one, why are we not doing one of the more normal engines that you'd put in something like a Caterham, something like a Pinto or a Crossflow, anything like that?
Even a Rover V8, something like that. They've all been done, and that kind of is the answer.
Yeah, so we haven't done any of those because they're normal.
Yeah.
And there's another one, is given that we haven't done a normal one, why did we land specifically on a 20 VT?
Yeah. So we went through a big list. If you look at episode 2, we went through a big list of possible engines we could use, including BMW inlines, a white block Volvo, Rover V8, Lexus V8, all of these kind of options, and discounted the inlines, the inline 5 and 6 because we'd have to lengthen the chassis too much, the V8s because we'd have to widen the front so much, all of these things, and then looked for other options. And whilst looking at kind of the 4AG, RB20s, things like that were short enough, we happened upon the A3 that we had in the driveway, which is a 4-pot. It's the right shape, but the wrong orientation. And then you kind of had a madcap idea.
Yeah, I wandered into Aid's room one day and I said, Aid, I've had a terrible idea. What if we just take an entire front engine, front-wheel drive power pack from something? We hadn't landed on the 20 VT yet, but we started with this idea of a transaxle. So what if we just take it out the front of something and put it in the back of ours?
Yeah, and then within minutes, I went, we have one of those on the driveway, and went down and started measuring for rough comparison of what is the average width of engine mounts for a four-banger package with a gearbox. Will it be too wide to fit behind it? Will it be ridiculous, etc., etc.?
And it turned out it was fine.
Yeah, it was absolutely perfect. The chassis legs in the A3 are exactly the same width at the outside of the mounts as that Caterham chassis is, which pretty much just landed us on using the 20 VT because it was right there. We can take on all of the measurements from that. We can use it to shape it. And we also have a lot of knowledge around that because of people we know. They're a well-understood platform.
Yeah.
It became an engine of convenience, even though we didn't tear that car apart.
And I think the explanation for how we ended up building this and choosing a 20-valve turbo kind of aligns nicely with another question we get asked fairly regularly.
Yeah.
Why build something with closed wheels and a full-height windscreen and roof?
You mean, why make a rod for my own back?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yes, unfortunately, my back is the problem. I need something that I actually fit in. A Caterham is too low for me. No, as in, the car is too low to stop things getting in my face. We've all seen the clip of Clarkson in the Atom. And I don't want that. I want a car that I can actually use and enjoy rather than just get punched in the face by the air when I'm driving it.
Yeah.
And that's why we ended up putting a full height windscreen on. I was dead set on that from the beginning, and you kind of understood why, but you were unhappy about it.
Yeah, I didn't like it, but I accepted it.
Yeah, I get the joke, I'm just not laughing.
Yeah, but it's like by the time you do a full height windscreen, you're kind of forced to do a roof, because if you don't have a roof with a full size windscreen, everything looks weird.
Even with a cage in supporting it, it works, but it doesn't work. And then by the time you've made the body a little bit wider to cater for any off-the-shelf windscreen, we picked one of the narrowest ones we could find that would work. And it was still so much wider than the body had to be wider. And once you end up making the body wider in the middle, well, you might as well put arches on the whole thing and close the wheels in, and that's kind of where we end up at. Closed wheel, full-size windscreen on a Caterham that's definitely not really a Caterham or any type of kit car you could possibly imagine. So, yeah, it was a very roundabout way of, I'm tall, and demand a certain level of convenience.
Yeah, so
and
if
it definitely made a rod for my own back.
So if you're ever building a kit car, just don't be tall.
Yeah, don't be tall. Just be shorter. It's so much easier. So speaking of having to make compromises, obviously that affected the timeline a lot. And I don't know exactly how long you thought it was going to take. I had a bit of an idea, but like, how long did you think we were going to be working on this?
So bear in mind, when everything I'm about to say is from like right back at the very, very beginning, before I knew that we were going to have a full windscreen and everything else.
Yeah, before I just dumped a load of scope creep on you.
Yeah, like my initial guess is going to be something like 2 years, and that felt pessimistic.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, 2 years was never really going to happen because of the amount that I knew I didn't know and would need to learn to make it work and be confident. Because I had at that point skimmed through the IVA book and panicked. But in my mind, it was going to be hopefully 12 months to wheels on the ground, which we achieved.
Yeah,
we got that. We got the suspension done, the engine in, and kind of had a framework, albeit a useless framework, but it rolled. after 12 months. And then the next 12 months would be getting the engine in, plumbed, and running. And that's pretty much where it fell apart. The next one was the third year would be getting it ready for the IVA and getting it through that. And then the fourth year would either be fixing bits of the IVA and then finishing off the kind of the fluff around it to make it a nice finished project.
Yeah, effectively polish.
Yes.
In some sense,
and ultimately that second year when we put the engine in, for me at least, suddenly opened up a world of dependencies. I don't know how you felt when we started going, oh, we'll just put the radiator. Let's do the cooling system. Oh, the cooling system depends on the heating system.
Yeah, because you find all of a sudden all these other systems arrive and they're all interconnected and you've got to kind of design everything with everything else in mind.
Yeah.
And all of my initial estimates around like assuming a fairly conventional kit car where you can buy headlights and buy wiring looms and everything, all of that went completely out.
Yes, I just kicked the legs out from underneath that with just, oh no, we'll do this. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. And just, it stacked and stacked and stacked. And even something as simple as the heating system. Put the radiator in, run the pipes, you know where the inlet outlet are. Perfect. But the cooling, the heating system for the cabin, if we're going to put a heater in, which would be nice, is actually part of the loop and has to be permanently open. So we have to run another set of pipes for that, or put a loop in and tee off. And that's still a problem we haven't 100% solved. And I'm not entirely sure whether it's worth now going back and doing it a slightly different way. But this is just one example of one dependency very early on that just kicked the timeline in the shins. The other one is COVID, because you ended up stuck in Wales.
Yep.
Back at your folks for a good deal of time in what was essentially the 3rd/4th year.
Yeah.
And at that point, I didn't feel confident enough to start tearing the wiring apart to make the engine run. So I kicked that can down the road and started making bodywork.
Because the point we were at there, the sensible next best thing was to run the engine.
Yeah.
And we couldn't because that was wiring.
Drape the wiring across it, approximately, turn the key, make sure it worked. And then, we need to extend the wiring. We need to know how long we need to extend it by, because we don't want to do that more than once. We've had to do that more than once. And that was just another, we don't know enough to finish this thing, so we'll have to kick the can down the road a little bit and pick this up later and do something else. And now, not having the engine actually turning on the key is the elephant in the room. It is brutal, and it's not helped by the fact that we killed the ECU.
We get asked all the time, have you run the engine yet?
Yeah.
When are you going to run the engine?
Why doesn't
When's
the
it
engine
gonna
run?
turn? Yeah.
Does it run under its own power? No. I mean, up until a few months ago, it didn't. It had Bluetooth drive shafts.
Yeah.
And it's still just the kind of very hastily welded together one, so we get the right things. But the question of how long did you think it would take is just, it's the biggest regret. It's the one most full of regrets, because so many things didn't go the way I'd planned for valid reasons. But damn. So another question we get asked, less so by people who see the car and more by friends who know us, who've seen us all the way through this process, is do you regret doing it? Do you have any regrets about how you would do it? And as a second part, in hindsight, what would you do differently? Now, I have a bunch of regrets about what I did building this and decisions I've made, but you've obviously been thrown in at the deep end with a
couple of times, yeah.
So aside from the windscreen and the closed wheels, which we've covered, and I agree to an extent, what else? What do you regret about what we did?
So I'm going to carefully caveat, I don't regret the project as a whole.
No.
It hasn't gone how I expected by any means. It hasn't done the things that we expected it to do, but it's been great anyway.
Yes.
So, one, no regrets about doing it at all. Regrets on like particular parts of it.
Yeah.
I regret not getting the engine running sooner.
Yep.
I regret the sort of lack of planning in terms of like we've repeatedly extended the chassis, we hung the radiator off the front, we hung the bumper mount off of that, and so on. But we've kept extending and extending both ends of the car.
Yes.
So
when we could have not.
Yeah, we could have simply like actually drawn a sort of design of the whole thing and gone, okay, well, like the radiator's here, the wheels are going to have to be there, the headlights are going to have to be there, and just made the thing that size.
Yeah.
So I regret the repeated short-sightedness that we've shown.
Yeah, my biggest regret is essentially chasing the content output demon and always going, I don't have time to think this through. I just got to get something out, got to get something out, got to get something out. Whereas if I'd taken a step back, I probably could have made a couple of videos of, here is where we're at and this is what we need to think about. No, we're not going to weld anything this week. We're going to do this instead. And as you say, we have had to make a bunch of compromises. And I think the biggest one is width. We could have cut that chassis down the middle, extended it 6 inches, and solved a huge number of the problems.
Yeah, there's stuff
easily changed stuff that way, and we wouldn't have had as big of a sill to step over for one. We'd have had more cabin room for another, which would have generally improved the comfort dramatically.
It may even have meant we could just use an entire off-the-shelf dashboard from something.
Potentially, yeah, from something really narrow and just gone, but it was so much smaller than anything, we'd have to butcher it and it would just look terrible. But it would have shortcut a huge number of problems, just making the main cabin wider.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my biggest regret, although I fall on that crutch proudly and go, do you know what, I've never drawn it, I never drew it out, except for one quick doodle of the rough kind of outline of it once upon a time, which we still butchered and changed anyway. I've never done it. No, I should have. That's what in hindsight, I would sit down and do a lot more measurements. Now I'm a lot more proficient in CAD. I'm much happy to sit down and go, oh yeah, I just make it in CAD. At the time, I hated CAD.
Yeah.
And there was no way I was going to do that. I wasn't confident in my technical drawing or anything. Not that my technical drawing is particularly good, but I have a better understanding now. So in hindsight, I would sit down, learn, figure out way more stuff.
I mean, even if you just went in SketchUp, right, and you blocked out cabin, pedals, steering wheel, wheels, steering system, fuel tank, like you can box things out and get some dimensions.
Way better.
We absolutely should have.
We should have done that.
Because the front of the car right now, we've got bumper mounts, radiator module. Like we've got about 3 or 4 different things all dangled off of each other as we've extended it. Yeah,
it's just not succinctly built with an overarching design, even ignoring the bodywork side that we didn't really think about. Just from an internal services base chassis construction, like there is no plan. And we should have had a plan. Like that's my big hindsight. As I say, widen the cockpit 6 inches.
Yeah.
And plan it a little bit better. I don't think I still would have gone open wheel without a windscreen. I would have kept those. In fact, making the body 6 inches wider would have made the windscreen infinitely easier. But never mind. So yeah. And also, don't kill the ECU.
Yes. Yeah, not killing the ECU would have I think improved things a lot.
Yeah. Do not leave
we've
the
actually
ECU
had the engine running.
Grounded when you're welding on the chassis. And like completely destroy it, because that thing is dead as a dodo. We plugged it in and it did nothing. So that's my biggest regret.
What, killing the ECU?
My biggest regret is probably killing the ECU, because that has been such an easy stopper for not just making the engine run.
Yeah.
And that goes into that. So yeah, not killing biggest regret, killing the ECU. Hindsight changes, wider, better plan.
Yeah.
Which
I'll go along with that.
I guess is easy to say with hindsight.
That's the point.
Yes.
Well, you're about out of coffee.
Yep.
I'm definitely out of tea. I got nothing left in here.
And we have covered pretty much all of the general questions we get asked. If you have specific ones, put them in this video or jump on one of the live streams.
If there's anything you want to know, you're basically guaranteed an answer if you drop in.
Yeah, pretty much. And we go into much more detail even than here, because, hell, we have the time to do so. So, jump on the live stream, subscribe to the channel, like the video as well, so you get notified when those videos go up, or follow us on all the usual social media platforms.
Yep, you can also jump on shop.pedalbox.show, where you can buy an empty teacup.
Yep, the one that hasn't been horribly abused with tea.
Horribly abused.
And dropped around all over the place.
Yep.
You can also support us directly on patreon.com/pedalbox show, where you can join at a variety of different tiers, or if you want, you can join the YouTube channel as well and do all of your payments. That's too much waffle.
Just
it's fine.
Patreon.
You can.
It, okay?
It's fine.
Just join Patreon.